If Patton didn't move in time, the 101st Airborne would have been wiped out, not captured, not forced to surrender. Wiped out. December 1944. The Screaming Eagles were surrounded at Bastogne. Ammunition nearly gone. Medical supplies exhausted. German tanks closing in from all sides. Hitler himself had ordered their complete destruction. The weather was so bad that Allied air support couldn't fly. No one was coming to save them except one man refused to accept that reality. This is the moment Eisenhower realized Patton might be the only general who could save the war, and what he said when Patton actually pulled it off. A story of impossible odds, desperate men, and the phone call that changed everything for days. That's all the 101st had left. This is what happened. Next, December 19th, 1944. The Situation Room at Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force was silent, except for the grim voices delivering bad news. German forces had punched through American lines in the Ardennes, creating chaos across a 50-mi front. But the worst news concerned Bastogne, a small Belgian town that nobody had heard of a week ago, but was now the most critical position in Europe. The 101st Airborne Division, along with elements of other units, was surrounded. Over 10,000 American soldiers trapped with no clear escape route. German forces outnumbered them nearly 3-1. Worse, the weather had grounded Allied aircraft, eliminating air resupply and close air support. The lifelines paratroopers depended on. Eisenhower stood before the map, studying the bulge and Allied lines. His face was drawn, exhausted. He'd barely slept since the German offensive began. Intelligence officers briefed him on the 101st situation, and each update was worse than the last. Ammunition rationed to 10 rounds per rifle. Artillery shells nearly depleted. Medical supplies running out. Wounded soldiers lying in freezing cellars because there was nowhere else to put them, and German attacks intensifying. How long can they hold? Eisenhower asked. The intelligence officer hesitated. Sir, realistically, 4 to 5 days. Maybe a week if they're lucky. After that, they'll be out of ammunition and supplies. The Germans will overrun them. Eisenhower's jaw clenched. Losing an entire airborne division, America's elite troops, would be a military catastrophe, but it would be even worse for morale. These were the men who had jumped into Normandy on D-Day, fought through Operation Market Garden, earned legendary status if they were annihilated at Bastogne. The psychological impact on Allied forces would be devastating. What are our options? For relief, Eisenhower demanded. His staff outlined the grim reality. British forces under Montgomery were containing the northern shoulder of the German breakthrough, but couldn't attack south toward Bastogne quickly. Other American units were engaged in desperate defensive battles. Nobody had the strength or position to launch an immediate relief operation. Nobody except Third Army, currently fighting 100 miles south in the Saar region. That meant Patton. It always came back to Patton. Eisenhower had spent years managing George S. Patton's brilliance, ego, controversies, and insubordination. Their relationship was exhausting. But now, staring at the map showing 10,000 surrounded Americans, Eisenhower realized something uncomfortable. Patton might be the only general capable of pulling off the impossible maneuver needed to save them. "Get me Patton," Eisenhower ordered. "Tell him we need him at Verdun tomorrow for an emergency conference. And tell him to bring plans for offensive operations. He'll know what that means." After his staff left, Eisenhower stood alone in the Situation Room. His aide, Harry Butcher, later recorded that Eisenhower whispered to himself, "George, for once in this goddamn war, do exactly what I need you to do. Those paratroopers are counting on you. America is counting on you. I'm counting on you. Don't let me down." December 19th, 1944. The meeting at Verdun has become legendary. The moment when Patton made the promise that changed everything. But what's often overlooked is Eisenhower's reaction, his words, and the weight of the decision he made that day. The atmosphere in the Verdun headquarters was tense. Eisenhower opened by stating the obvious. The present situation is to be regarded as one of opportunity for us and not of disaster. He was trying to maintain confidence, but everyone in the room knew this was the worst crisis the Allies had faced since D-Day. Then Eisenhower turned to his assembled generals. "I want you to think about this. Really think before you answer. How quickly can we mount a relief operation to reach Bastogne?" Most generals began calculating logistics, supply lines, troop availability. Then Patton spoke up. "I can attack on the 22nd with 3 divisions. Silence. Other generals exchanged glances. Was Patton serious or grandstanding? To disengage from active combat, rotate 90 degrees, move over 100 miles through winter conditions, and launch a coordinated attack in 72 hours. Was beyond anything attempted in modern warfare. Eisenhower's eyes locked onto Patton. His response, recorded by multiple witnesses, was measured and deadly serious. "George, I'm not asking for optimism. I'm not asking for what might be theoretically possible. I'm asking what you can actually genuinely accomplish. The lives of 10,000 American soldiers depend on your answer. The men of the 101st Airborne are surrounded, outnumbered, running out of everything. If you say you'll be there, and you're not, they die, all of them. So, I'll ask again. Can you attack on December 22nd? Patton didn't hesitate. I've already got 3 plans prepared. My staff anticipated this meeting. We've wargamed the contingencies. On December 22nd, my 4th Armored Division will attack north toward Bastogne. This isn't a promise. It's a fact." Eisenhower studied Patton's face, searching for the usual bravado, the exaggeration, the grandstanding. Instead, he saw cold certainty. Patton had actually prepared for this before the meeting. That level of foresight impressed even Eisenhower. "All right, George, you've got your mission. Relieve Bastogne. You have operational freedom to execute as you see fit. But understand this." Eisenhower leaned forward, his voice dropping to a tone his staff rarely heard. "If you fail, if those paratroopers are lost because you couldn't deliver what you promised, I will personally see that you never command troops again, not just relief from 3rd Army. End of career. Am I perfectly clear? Crystal clear, sir? I won't fail." After the meeting, Eisenhower pulled aside his chief of staff, General Walter Bedell Smith, Smith's diary records the conversation. The boss asked me if I thought George could actually do it. I said it seemed impossible. Ike said, "That's why I'm sending Patton. Impossible is what he does." December 20th to 25th, 1944. While Patton's Third Army executed its pivot north, Eisenhower endured the most stressful week of his command. Every few hours, situation reports arrived from Bastogne. Each one was grimmer than the last. December 21st, German artillery pounding American positions continuously, casualties mounting. 101st Airborne Commander General Anthony McAuliffe sends a famous reply to German surrender demand. Nuts. Eisenhower read the report and allowed himself a brief smile. At least their spirit isn't broken, he told his staff. December 22nd. Patton's forces attacked as promised, but progress was slow. Winter conditions, determined German resistance, and difficult terrain slowed advance. At Bastogne, ammunition critical, some units down to 5 rounds per rifle. Medical supplies nearly exhausted. Wounded dying from lack of treatment. Eisenhower sent message to McAuliffe. Hold at all costs. Relief is coming. But privately Eisenhower confided to his diary, "I gave George the green light because I had no choice. Now I'm watching the clock, watching the maps, and praying he reaches Bastogne before it's too late. Every hour that passes, more paratroopers die. If George doesn't break through, their blood is on my hands for trusting him." December 23rd. Weather cleared enough for air resupply. C-47 transports dropped ammunition, medical supplies, and food to Bastogne. It bought time, but not much. German attacks intensified. Perimeter shrinking. Some positions overrun. Hand-to-hand fighting in the streets. Eisenhower received reports that German forces were preparing a major assault to finally crush Bastogne's defenders. Hitler had personally ordered the town's capture at any cost. Eisenhower sent urgent message to Patton, "George, I need maximum effort. The 101st can't hold much longer. Whatever you're doing, do it faster." December 24th, Christmas Eve. Eisenhower spent the evening in his office unable to rest. Staff officers noted he looked 10 years older than a week ago. Reports showed Third Army still fighting toward Bastogne miles away. At current pace, they might not arrive in time. Eisenhower composed messages to families of the 101st Airborne, letters he would send if the paratroopers were lost. He wrote to McCliff's wife, to the division chaplain's family, to the families of men he'd personally spoken with before they deployed. His aide found him late that night, surrounded by unfinished condolence letters. Eisenhower looked up and said simply, "I hope I don't have to send these." December 25th, Christmas Day, still no breakthrough. Eisenhower attended chapel service, but couldn't focus. He kept checking messages every 15 minutes. Nothing. The 101st was still surrounded. Third Army still fighting to reach them. Time running out. December 26th, 1944. For 50 p.m. the phone rang. Eisenhower's aide answered, listened, then turned pale. "Sir, it's General Patton. He says it's urgent." Eisenhower grabbed the phone. "George Ike, we're through." 4th Armored made contact with the 101st at 1650 hours. The corridor is narrow, but it's open. We're pushing supplies and reinforcements through now. Estonia is relieved. For several seconds, Eisenhower couldn't speak. His hand gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. Staff officers in the room watched their supreme commander's face transform, tension releasing. Shoulders dropping, eyes closing briefly. "George, say that again. We're through to Bastogne. The screaming eagles are safe. They're battered to hell. But they held. We got there in time." Eisenhower's voice, when he finally spoke, cracked with emotion. "George, I thank God. Thank you. You did it. You saved them." There was a pause on the line. Patton, never comfortable with sentiment, responded gruffly, "Just doing my job, Ike. Those paratroopers did the real work. We just knocked on the door. No, George, don't diminish this. You moved an Army 90 in a blizzard and broke through German lines in 4 days. That's not just doing your job. That's Eisenhower searched for words. That's why you're invaluable. Despite everything, all our conflicts, this is why." After hanging up, Eisenhower stood motionless for a moment. Then he turned to his staff, and witnesses recorded what happened next. His eyes were wet, tears he didn't bother hiding. He said, "Gentlemen, General Patton has just accomplished something I will remember for the rest of my life. He saved 10,000 American soldiers who were hours, maybe minutes, from annihilation. He did what I asked him to do when I asked him to do it against odds everyone said were impossible. George S. Patton is the most difficult subordinate I have ever commanded. He is also, without question, one of the finest battlefield commanders America has ever produced." Eisenhower immediately sent official messages to the 101st Airborne congratulating their heroic defense, to 3rd Army commending their relief operation, to the War Department reporting Bastogne's relief. But he also sent a personal telegram to Patton. "George, words cannot adequately express my gratitude and admiration for what 3rd Army accomplished. You gave your word you would be there. You kept that word. In doing so, you saved not just 10,000 soldiers, but possibly the entire Ardennes campaign. Well done does not begin to cover it. This operation will be studied for generations as an example of operational excellence. I am proud to have you under my command, Ike." That evening, Eisenhower's personal aide found him alone, staring at the map showing the narrow corridor to Bastogne. Eisenhower said quietly, "For more hours." That's all George had. For more hours. And the 101st would have been overrun. He made it with 4 hours to spare. 4 hours between salvation and annihilation. In the days and years following Bastogne's relief, Eisenhower's words about Patton evolved from immediate gratitude to historical assessment. What he said publicly and privately defined how both men would be remembered. December 27th, 1944, Eisenhower's official statement. The relief of Bastogne by elements of Lieutenant General Patton's 3rd Army represents one of the outstanding achievements of this war. The speed and coordination displayed in disengaging from the Saar offensive, pivoting north, and attacking through difficult weather, and determined resistance demonstrates the highest levels of operational art, the defenders of Bastogne and their relievers have written a new chapter in American military history. But to General Marshall, Army Chief of Staff, Eisenhower was more candid. George Patton just saved my command. If Bastogne had fallen with an entire airborne division lost, the psychological impact would have been catastrophic. Questions would have been raised about Allied strategy, American military competence, and my leadership. Patton prevented that disaster. Whatever frustrations I've had with him, and they are many, this operation justifies every difficult decision I've made to keep him in command. To British Field Marshal Montgomery, coordinating northern operations, Eisenhower wrote, "Patton's relief of Bastogne demonstrates American operational capability at its finest. I know there have been concerns about American military effectiveness. Estonia should put those concerns to rest." In his personal diary, Eisenhower revealed the emotional weight. "I have spent years managing George Patton's ego, controversies, and insubordination. There have been times I wanted to fire him, times I've questioned whether he was worth the trouble. Bastogne answered that question definitively. He is worth every frustration, every headache, every moment of anger, because when it mattered most, when 10,000 American soldiers faced annihilation, George delivered. Not eventually, not with excuses. He delivered exactly when and how he promised. That's the definition of a great commander." To Patton himself, Eisenhower sent a follow-up message on January 2nd, 1945. "George, I've had time to reflect on Bastogne. What you accomplished goes beyond tactical brilliance. You gave those paratroopers hope when they had none. You proved that American forces could execute complex operations under impossible conditions. You changed how Germans view American military capability. Most importantly, you saved lives, not theoretically, but literally. Every man of the 101st who came home to his family after the war owes that to your speed and aggression. That's a legacy worth more than all the medals and promotions in the army. I wanted you to know that." Years later, in his memoir, Crusade. In Europe, Eisenhower devoted significant space to Bastogne. General Patton's relief operation stands as one of the war's pivotal moments. The rapid movement of 3 divisions, the coordination required, and the aggressive execution under terrible conditions showcased American military excellence. History will debate many aspects of the war, but Baston's relief is beyond debate. It was operational genius. In a 1960 interview 2 years before his death, Eisenhower was asked about his most difficult command decisions. His response, "Trusting George Patton to relieve Bastogne, was agonizing. I was betting everything. The lives of 10,000 paratroopers, the stability of our entire position, on a general who had proven difficult to manage. But I also knew George was the only one who could do it when he succeeded. When those paratroopers were saved, I felt relief and gratitude beyond anything I can describe. That phone call, 'We're through to Bastogne,' those 4 words might be the most important 4 words I heard during the entire war. The ultimate testament came in Eisenhower's final assessment written in 1965. History will remember many generals from World War II, but few will be remembered for saving an entire Division from annihilation through pure operational brilliance. That was George S. Patton at Bastogne. Whatever else he was, difficult, controversial, flawed, he was also the man who refused to accept that those paratroopers were doomed. He promised he would save them, and he did. The relief of Bastogne wasn't just a military operation. It was the moment Eisenhower realized that genius, however difficult to manage, was worth every frustration when it delivered miracles. If this story of impossible odds, desperate decisions, and the words that defined legends moved you, subscribe to this channel now. We're bringing you the untold moments, the private words, and the human drama behind history's greatest battles. Hit that notification bell, drop a comment about leadership under pressure, and share this with anyone who needs to hear about what's possible when someone refuses to accept defeat. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most difficult people achieve the most extraordinary.